Welcome to News Beacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. October 14, 2025. The city of Moscow wakes up to a chill that seems to seep into every corner, not just from the crisp autumn air, but from a sense of unease that has settled over its people. Moscow's streets are colder than ever, not from the weather, but from a wave of mass layoffs sweeping the city. The usual morning bustle is muted, replaced by a heavy silence as people trudge to work, uncertain if today will be their last day on the job. The news isn't coming from state TV, but from whispered conversations and anxious texts. In cafes and on street corners, people share rumors and warnings, their eyes darting nervously as they check their phones for updates from friends and colleagues. Social media is flooded with stories of sudden firings, entire departments let go overnight, and desperate pleas for job leads. The digital grapevine is alive with fear, as Muscovites try to piece together what's really happening. Pink slips are everywhere, and thousands are suddenly out of work, forced to navigate a shrinking job market. Job centers are overwhelmed, with lines stretching around the block as people clutch folders of resumes and hope for a miracle. This isn't a slow downturn, it's a shock. One day, offices are bustling, the next, they're empty, with security guards quietly escorting former employees out the door. The layoffs cut across every sector, from tech to transport. No industry is spared. Engineers, drivers, accountants, and shop clerks all find themselves in the same uncertain boat. White-collar and blue-collar workers alike are now united by uncertainty. For the first time, the city's social divisions blur as everyone faces the same questions. How will I pay my bills? What will I tell my family? The city's energy is replaced by anxiety, as families burn through savings and question their futures. Kitchen tables become war rooms, where parents strategize over dwindling finances and children listen in, sensing the tension. For many, the safety net is already fraying. Elderly parents worry about pensions, while young adults, once optimistic, now scroll endlessly through job postings that seem to vanish as quickly as they appear. The government's claims of economic resilience are cracking under the weight of these stories. Official statements promise stability, but the reality on the ground tells a different story, one of growing desperation. Official silence only fuels rumors and fear. In the absence of clear answers, speculation runs wild, and every new rumor spreads panic through neighborhoods and workplaces. For the first time in a generation, long-term unemployment is a real threat for many Muscovites. The city that once promised opportunity now offers only uncertainty, and the fear of being left behind grows with each passing day. The social contract, stability in exchange for loyalty, feels broken. People who once trusted the system now question its very foundation, wondering if anyone is truly looking out for them. The economic storm has hit the capital, and its true impact is only beginning to be felt. The city's iconic skyline, once a symbol of progress, now looms over a population gripped by fear and uncertainty. The question is no longer if the crisis will reach you, but when. In Moscow, everyone is waiting for the next shoe to drop, hoping that somehow they'll be spared, but knowing, deep down, that no one is truly safe from the storm. In Kuzbass and other industrial heartlands, Russia's coal industry is collapsing at record speed. 19,000 miners lost their jobs in just 6 months, with over 100,000 more at risk. Sanctions, soaring costs, and plummeting global prices have made Russian coal nearly unsellable. Losses have already surpassed £2 billion this year, reversing last year's profits. 13% of coal companies have declared bankruptcy, and dozens more are on the brink. Kuzbass faces a massive budget deficit, forced to borrow billions just to function. Even giants like Mikhail are shutting mines as output plummets. This isn't just an economic crisis, it's a social catastrophe for entire regions. The backbone of Russia's industry is buckling under pressure. Russia's civil aviation sector is in freefall, crippled by sanctions and cut off from Western aircraft and parts. The promise of a new domestic fleet has failed. Only one new plane delivered this year, far short of targets. Airlines are cannibalizing grounded jets for parts, leading to a surge in safety incidents. Russia now has one of the world's lowest aviation safety ratings. Attempts to lease planes abroad have failed, leaving the fleet aging and unsafe. The Kremlin's desperate appeal to the UN for sanctions relief is a public admission: the industry is collapsing. The economic pain is hitting Russian households hardest, touching every aspect of daily life. For many families, the struggle to make ends meet has become a constant source of stress and anxiety, overshadowing even the simplest routines. Mortgage payments have soared to unprecedented levels, with some families now facing bills of 1,000,000 rubles a month, an impossible sum for most. Even those who once felt secure in their homes are now worried about losing them, as interest rates climb, and monthly payments eat up a growing share of household income. The dream of homeownership is slipping away for many, replaced by the fear of foreclosure and mounting debt. Inflation and a collapsing ruble have made everyday goods unaffordable. Grocery shopping, once a routine task, has become a source of dread as prices for basic necessities like bread, milk, and vegetables skyrocket. Shelves are often half empty, and families are forced to make difficult choices about what they can afford to buy. Any wage increases are quickly wiped out by rising prices, leaving real income stagnant or even falling. Paychecks that once covered the basics now barely stretch to the end of the month, and many are dipping into savings or taking on extra work just to get by. Shoppers are cutting back on everything from groceries to clothing, and online forums are filled with anxiety and frustration. People share tips on how to save money, vent about their struggles, and search for hope in a sea of uncertainty. The sense of stability that once defined daily life is gone, replaced by a pervasive financial fear. Evenings that used to be spent together in comfort are now filled with tense conversations about bills and the future. Families are postponing major life decisions, like having children, buying a car, or moving, feeling trapped by uncertainty. Plans for vacations, celebrations, or even small treats are put on hold, as people focus on survival rather than dreams. The government's claims of resilience ring hollow to those struggling to pay for food and housing. Official reassurances do little to ease the daily hardships faced by ordinary Russians, who see little relief in sight. The social contract is fraying as people work harder, but fall further behind. Exhaustion and frustration are growing as the promise of a better future seems increasingly out of reach. For millions, the crisis is a daily, grinding reality, one that shapes every decision, every conversation, and every hope for tomorrow. The root of Russia's economic collapse is clear: the war in Ukraine. Military spending has tripled, draining funds from health, education, and infrastructure. 300,000 men mobilized, 1 million more have fled, leaving a critical labor shortage. Despite layoffs in some sectors, military industries compete for workers, distorting the economy. Railways are clogged with military shipments, driving up costs for everyone else. For coal, transport now eats up nearly all profits, fueling bankruptcies. Economists warn this war-driven model echoes the Soviet collapse: short-term gains, long-term ruin. Russia's war economy is inflicting deep, lasting damage. The Kremlin's response to the crisis has been piecemeal and inadequate. Bailouts for the coal industry are little more than tax breaks, no real relief for collapsing companies. The government's reluctance to spend suggests either empty coffers or a willingness to let sectors fail. Central bank rate hikes, meant to fight inflation, have triggered the mortgage crisis. There's no unified strategy, just a scramble to fund the war while the domestic economy crumbles. New EU sanctions loom, promising even more pain. The government's inaction is eroding public trust. Beneath official silence, public anger is growing. Online, Russians vent about soaring prices, lost jobs, and broken promises. Memories of the chaotic 1990s and miners' strikes are resurfacing. The sense of betrayal is deep. People feel they're paying for a war they never chose. The gap between state propaganda and daily reality is fueling resentment. Layoffs in tight-knit communities are especially volatile. If the crisis deepens, this simmering anger could erupt into open defiance. The crisis has exposed the primitive core of Russia's economy. What was once hidden beneath the surface is now impossible to ignore. The country's economic structure, long propped up by a handful of lucrative exports, is showing its cracks for all to see. Over-reliance on oil, gas, and coal left the country vulnerable to sanctions and price shocks. For years, these resources brought in billions, but they also discouraged innovation and diversification. When global demand falters or sanctions bite, there's little to cushion the blow. There's little to fall back on. Manufacturing and tech sectors are weak, and the war has only made things worse. Factories that once hummed with activity now stand silent, and the promise of a modern digital economy has faded. Skilled workers are leaving and investment is drying up. The Kremlin is now looting resources from occupied Ukraine, but even that can't prop up failing industries. These desperate measures are a sign of how far things have fallen, and how little hope remains for a genuine recovery under current conditions. Defense spending creates a temporary boom, but it starves the rest of the economy. Money that could have gone to schools, hospitals, or infrastructure is funneled into the war machine, leaving ordinary Russians to face shortages and rising prices. This is the same path that doomed the Soviet Union. The echoes of the past are everywhere: crumbling buildings, empty shelves, and a sense of stagnation that's hard to shake. Manufacturing is shrinking, aviation can't build planes, and coal can't survive without exports. Industries that once symbolized progress are now relics of a bygone era, unable to adapt to new realities. The economic foundation is crumbling, roads, bridges, and public spaces are falling apart, and the neglect is visible everywhere you look. The promise of prosperity has given way to decay. Decades of failed policy and neglect are now impossible to hide. Ordinary people bear the brunt, pensioners wait in line for aid, businesses shutter, and hope for a better future fades with each passing day. The freefall is structural, not just a temporary downturn. Without real reform and a new vision, Russia's economy risks being trapped in decline for years to come. As 2025 ends, Russia stands at the edge of economic disaster. Mass layoffs, industry collapse, and inflation have created a perfect storm. The war and sanctions have pushed the economy into freefall. The human cost, lost jobs, foreclosures, hopelessness, is mounting. The old social contract is broken, and public anger is rising. The government's response is superficial, exposing the economy's lack of resilience. With export markets closed and industries failing, Russia faces isolation and decay. The current path leads only to further decline. The crisis of 2025 is a fundamental threat to the state's stability. The world watches to see if Russia will pull back or fall over the edge.